Have you ever wondered why the person who once made you feel like you were asking for too much suddenly starts watching your stories, liking your posts, or trying to sneak back into your life the moment you pull away? That's not coincidence. That's psychology. That's power. See, the truth is, people who only give you crumbs don't do it because they don't have more to give. They do it because they know you'll settle for less. They feed you just enough to keep you around, just enough to make you hope. And the moment you stop hoping, the game changes. The power flips. When you start realizing your worth, when you stop checking your phone waiting for their message, when your silence becomes louder than any words you could say, that's when they start to panic. Because the person who once had control over your emotions now realizes they've lost access to your energy. You see, crumbs are not about love, they're about control. They keep you craving, guessing, and doubting yourself. But the second you say enough, the entire illusion shatters. They start to see what they lost. And that's when obsession begins, not because they love you, but because they can't stand that you finally love yourself. So in this video, we're diving deep into that transformation, the shift from being starved for attention to becoming the one who no longer needs it. Because once you stop accepting crumbs, you stop living small. You stop begging for love that should have been freely given. And here's the twist. When you stop chasing, they start remembering. When you stop waiting, they start watching. Let's talk about why walking away is the most powerful thing you'll ever do. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to have endless love, time, and effort for others, but when it came to you, all you got were leftovers, the bare minimum, the occasional text, the half-hearted effort that always left you questioning your worth? Here's the truth. They didn't give you the bare minimum because you weren't deserving of more. They did it because they knew they could. People give you the level of effort that you require from them, not what they're truly capable of. When someone senses that you'll keep showing up no matter how little they give, they start to believe they don't have to do more. They recognize your empathy, your loyalty, your willingness to understand, and instead of valuing it, they exploit it. They test your boundaries, and when you don't walk away, they start to assume you never will. That's how the cycle begins. Most people who breadcrumb you aren't cruel by accident. They operate from fear, ego, and convenience. They crave control, not connection. Giving you just enough keeps you emotionally invested while they keep their options open. It's manipulation disguised as affection. And the saddest part? You probably mistook their inconsistency for mystery, their silence for depth, and their lack of effort for emotional struggle. You believed in their potential, not their reality. But here's what they never expected you to wake up. They never thought you'd stop chasing the version of them that existed only in your imagination. They didn't expect you to notice that busy was just an excuse, that you're too good for me was just emotional cowardice dressed up as honesty. They gave you the bare minimum because it allowed them to feel wanted without having to give up their comfort. It was their way of keeping power, until you decided you no longer needed crumbs. When you finally stop accepting half effort and half love, it shakes them. Because suddenly the control they once had is gone. They start to see that your absence hits harder than your presence ever did. And that's when the story starts to change. Not because they've grown, but because they can no longer use your kindness as their safety net. The moment you demand more, you force them to confront the truth. They were never enough for someone who always gave everything. Breadcrumbing isn't just a dating trend or a bad habit. It's a psychological game rooted in insecurity, ego, and control. When someone breadcrumbs you, they're not trying to love you. They're trying to manage you. They want to keep you close enough to feel wanted, but far enough to never have to commit. It's a manipulation tactic disguised as emotional connection, and it thrives on inconsistency. At its core, breadcrumbing is about dopamine control. Every time they send you a random text, like an old photo, or say I miss you after weeks of silence, your brain lights up. That tiny hit of validation tricks you into thinking there's still hope, that maybe this time they mean it, but they don't. They're not feeding your heart, they're feeding your addiction to almost. They understand, consciously or not, that by giving you unpredictable affection, they keep you hooked. For the breadcrumber, this behavior serves a purpose. It's a way to maintain emotional power while avoiding vulnerability. They get to feel desired, admired, even chased, without ever having to risk rejection or intimacy. It's emotional fast food, quick, cheap, and completely devoid of nourishment. They do just enough to keep your attention, but never enough to earn your trust. And here's the twist. Breadcrumbing often comes from deeply rooted fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough. Fear of losing control. They crave connection but can't handle the responsibility that comes with real closeness. So they throw crumbs instead of offering consistency. It's easier to lead someone on than to face their own emotional emptiness. But for the one on the receiving end, breadcrumbing is devastating. It creates confusion, self-doubt, and emotional exhaustion. You start questioning your worth, trying to decode their mixed signals, believing that if you just do a little more, they'll finally choose you. Yet every time you reach out, they pull away, just enough to keep you hungry. Breaking free starts with awareness. Once you understand the psychology behind it, the illusion loses its power. You realize it was never about you not being enough, it was about them needing control. The moment you stop responding to crumbs, the spell breaks, and suddenly you see it for what it truly was: manipulation dressed up as affection, attention pretending to be love. The moment you walk away, everything changes. And not just for them, but for you. It's a shift that starts quietly, almost invisibly, like a door closing softly behind you. You don't slam it, you don't announce it, you simply stop showing up for someone who never truly saw you. That silence, that withdrawal of energy, speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. Because when you walk away, you're not just leaving a person, you're leaving behind the version of yourself that tolerated less than you deserved. For the person who gave you crumbs, your absence hits in ways your presence never did. Suddenly they start noticing what they once overlooked. The way your energy filled the room, how your consistency made their chaos feel calm, how your kindness gave them validation they couldn't find anywhere else. When you were around, they took it for granted. Now that you're gone, they feel the emptiness where your energy used to be. It's human nature to crave what we can no longer control. And that's exactly what happens. The person who once had you chasing begins to chase the silence you left behind. The shift happens because walking away breaks the psychological pattern that breadcrumbing depends on. As long as you keep responding, they know they can pull you back in. But the second you stop feeding their ego, the entire dynamic collapses. Your indifference becomes the most powerful message you'll ever send. You're not angry. You're not begging. You're done, and that peace terrifies them more than your pain ever did. You see, when you walk away, you reclaim your emotional gravity. You stop orbiting around someone who only saw your light when it benefited them. Instead, you become the center of your own universe again. The energy you used to pour into deciphering mixed signals now gets redirected toward yourself. Your goals, your healing, your growth. That shift is magnetic. It's not about revenge or proving your worth. It's about remembering that you never needed their approval to begin with. And that's when they start to unravel. They may text you, "I miss you," or try to resurface with sudden nostalgia. But what they're really missing isn't you. It's the version of themselves they got to be when you were still giving them access. They miss the reflection of your care, your patience, your love. But by the time they realize that, it's too late. Because walking away doesn't just change the relationship, it changes you. You begin to understand that silence is not weakness, it's strength. Distance isn't punishment, it's protection. You no longer chase clarity from people committed to confusion. You stop auditioning for roles in stories that no longer deserve your presence. The shift, in truth, isn't about making them obsessed. It's about falling so deeply in love with your peace that you'll never accept crumbs again. And that kind of power, that's what truly drives them crazy. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood forms of power. People often mistake it for indifference or coldness, but true detachment isn't about not caring, it's about no longer clinging. It's the quiet confidence that comes when you know your worth so deeply that someone else's validation can't shake it. And ironically, that's exactly what triggers obsession. The moment you detach, the dynamic shifts from need to mystery. What once felt predictable to them suddenly becomes uncertain, and uncertainty fuels attraction. When you were emotionally invested, they knew your patterns. They knew you'd reply, forgive, explain, or show up, no matter how inconsistently they treated you. Your availability gave them security, even if they didn't appreciate it. But detachment removes that safety net. Suddenly, your energy isn't theirs to consume at will. You stop reacting. You stop explaining. You stop feeding their ego with your attention. And that's when curiosity starts to eat at them. Human psychology is wired to crave what it can't control. The moment you stop chasing, they begin to wonder why. They replay the conversations, reread your messages, scroll through old photos, trying to decode when the switch flipped. They can feel the loss of your emotional presence, and that absence becomes louder than any words you could have said. Detachment shifts the power balance because you're no longer emotionally predictable. Your silence becomes magnetic. Your peace becomes a mystery they can't solve. But here's the real beauty. Detachment isn't a performance. It's not about pretending you don't care to manipulate someone into wanting you more. It's about genuinely reaching a place where you no longer need their attention to feel validated. When you detach, you stop trying to fix them, prove your worth, or seek closure. You give all that energy back to yourself. You start glowing differently, moving differently, existing with a calm self-assurance that doesn't need to be announced. That energy is rare, and rarity breeds fascination. They'll start checking in to see if you're still there. They'll test the waters with a "Hey, how have you been?" or some vague social media reaction, hoping to re-establish control. But when you don't bite, when your energy remains grounded and unavailable, that's when obsession takes root. Because what they used to get effortlessly now feels out of reach. Your detachment forces them to face the truth. They were never in control of you, they were only in control of your reactions. True detachment creates obsession not because you're playing a game, but because you've stopped playing altogether. You've stepped out of the emotional tug of war, and they're left pulling on a rope with no one on the other end. That silence, that stillness, it haunts them. And as they spiral trying to recapture your attention, you stay calm, collected, and free. Because once you master detachment, you no longer chase connection, you attract it effortlessly from a place of power. Reclaiming your power and energy isn't about revenge or proving a point. It's about coming home to yourself. It's about remembering that your attention, your kindness, and your presence are not things to be handed out freely to people who haven't earned them. Every time you overextended yourself for someone who gave the bare minimum, you made a silent trade. You gave them your energy in exchange for their potential. But once you decide that you're done living off potential, something powerful happens. You start to rise. When you reclaim your power, you begin to see how much of your life revolved around trying to fix, heal, or be chosen by someone who didn't even choose themselves. You start to notice how many times you lowered your standards just to be understood, how many moments you silenced your needs just to keep peace. But power isn't found in pleasing, it's found in presence. The moment you decide that your peace matters more than their approval, the game ends. Reclaiming your energy starts with awareness. You stop giving your time to dead conversations, stop chasing closure from people who never gave you honesty, and stop explaining your worth to those who already saw it but chose to ignore it. You begin protecting your energy like currency, because that's exactly what it is. Every time you engage with someone who drains you, you're making an energetic withdrawal. But when you step back, when you rest, when you focus on yourself, you start to recharge. And that glow, that shift, becomes undeniable. There's something magnetic about a person who no longer needs validation. When you stand in your own energy, you radiate confidence that can't be faked. People feel it without you saying a word. You don't have to chase anymore, because your energy starts attracting everything that aligns with your new level of self-worth. The people who once underestimated you start noticing the change. They see that your silence isn't sadness, it's self-control. Your distance isn't bitterness, it's boundaries. The truth is, reclaiming your power doesn't happen overnight. It's a process of unlearning old habits, of realizing you don't have to fight for love, earn attention, or beg to be chosen. You start living in alignment with your values, investing in your passions, and surrounding yourself with people who pour into you the way you pour into them. That's when your power becomes unstoppable. And here's the most beautiful part. When you reclaim your energy, the same people who once drained it will come back, drawn by the very light they tried to dim. But this time, you won't be available. You'll be too busy thriving, too focused on peace to entertain chaos. Reclaiming your power isn't about closing yourself off, it's about opening yourself to everything and everyone that truly deserves you. That's the moment you stop surviving and start living. Self-worth over validation is the moment your entire life begins to shift. It's the moment you stop trying to prove your value to people who only ever saw what you could do for them, not who you truly were. For so long, you might have been conditioned to chase validation, to believe that if someone liked you, texted back, or gave you attention, that somehow confirmed your worth. But validation is temporary. It's fragile, conditional, and always dependent on someone else's approval. Self-worth, on the other hand, is unshakable. It's the quiet knowing that you are enough, even when no one is clapping for you. When you operate from validation, your emotions become reactive. Someone ignores you, and you spiral. Someone compliments you, and you soar. You're constantly swinging between highs and lows because your peace depends on external feedback. But when you build your sense of worth from within, the noise starts to fade. You stop begging for crumbs of reassurance from people who don't even know how to nourish themselves. You start realizing that what you've been searching for in others, acceptance, security, love, has been waiting inside you all along. Choosing self-worth over validation doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop needing approval to feel whole. You begin to measure your life not by how others see you, but by how authentically you show up for yourself. You stop apologizing for your standards, your boundaries, your truth. And yes, at first it might feel lonely, because the people who benefited from your people-pleasing will fall away. But that emptiness isn't loss. It's space. Space for peace, for healing, for alignment. When you start moving from self-worth, your energy changes. You no longer over-explain yourself, because you know your intentions are pure. You no longer chase, because you understand that what's meant for you will never require begging. Your boundaries become your protection, not your punishment. And those who truly value you will meet you at the level of respect you've set. People who once ignored you will start to notice the difference. But not because you're suddenly more interesting. It's because you've become grounded, unbothered, self-assured. You glow differently when you know who you are. Validation used to be a craving. Now it's a quiet afterthought. You've learned that love built on approval fades, but love built on respect endures. And that starts with self-respect. The power of self-worth is freedom. Freedom from performing, from chasing, from proving. Freedom to exist exactly as you are, and know that it's enough. You stop asking, am I good enough for them? And start asking, are they aligned with the peace I'm protecting? That's the evolution. That's when you stop accepting crumbs forever. Because once you've tasted the fullness of your own worth, nothing less will ever satisfy you again. Moving forward with confidence isn't just about leaving the past behind. It's about stepping into a version of yourself that no longer relies on external approval or fleeting attention. It's the moment when you realize that your life, your energy, and your happiness are yours to command, and no one else's indecision or inconsistency can diminish them. Confidence isn't arrogance. It's a quiet, unshakable belief in your value, a trust in your ability to navigate life on your own terms, and a refusal to settle for anything less than what aligns with your worth. To move forward with confidence, you first have to release the emotional baggage of someone else's choices. Every time you held on to crumbs, every moment you wondered why they didn't care enough, you were giving them power over your mind and your emotions. Walking away is the first step, but moving forward means reclaiming that power fully. It means looking at your life and saying, I am in charge of my happiness, my energy, and my destiny. I don't need anyone's validation to feel complete. Confidence grows when you invest in yourself. When you take the time to nurture your passions, pursue your goals, and honor your boundaries, you start radiating energy that cannot be ignored. People notice it, not because you're trying to impress, but because your alignment with your own values is magnetic. You move with intention, speak with clarity, and act with purpose. That kind of presence is impossible to manufacture. It's the result of consistent self-respect and self-awareness. Moving forward also requires trust in yourself. Trust that your instincts are valid, that your boundaries are necessary, and that your choices are worthy. Stop second-guessing your decisions based on what others might think or how they might react. The more you trust yourself, the less you are swayed by external opinions or fleeting attention. Confidence is rooted in the knowledge that even if someone doesn't see your worth, it doesn't make you any less valuable. Another critical aspect of moving forward with confidence is embracing the unknown. Letting go of someone who only gave you crumbs can feel scary, But stepping into that uncertainty with faith in yourself transforms fear into freedom. You learn to enjoy the journey rather than obsess over the outcome. You stop needing guarantees from people who are never going to provide them, and instead you create opportunities, experiences, and connections that resonate with your energy. Finally, moving forward with confidence means leading with integrity and authenticity. You no longer conform to fit someone else's expectations, nor do you compromise your standards to earn love or attention. You walk into every room, every conversation, and every relationship grounded in your self-respect, unapologetically. And as you do, you attract people and opportunities that align with your growth, while leaving behind those who thrived on inconsistency. Confidence isn't about control, it's about liberation. And once you move forward with it, life begins to reward you in ways that crumbs never could. By the time you've stepped away, set your boundaries, and reclaimed your energy, the reality becomes undeniable. They'll miss you when you're gone. But it's not just the casual noticing of absence. They'll feel the weight of your silence in ways they never felt your presence when you were giving endlessly. There's a quiet truth in human nature. We often fail to recognize value until it's no longer available. When you were always there, responding, forgiving, and giving, they assumed your patience was limitless. But absence has a way of revealing what was once invisible. When someone only gave you crumbs, they never had to confront your power. They never experienced the full depth of your presence because you were too busy adjusting yourself to their inconsistency. But once you step back and stop showing up on their terms, the illusion shatters. They begin to replay moments in their mind. How your laughter filled a room. How your advice was always steady. How your loyalty was unwavering. That's when regret sets in, often stronger than the affection they had shown before. They start to realize that what they took lightly was actually rare, and what they overlooked was irreplaceable. The truth is, they won't necessarily miss you because they understand your worth. They'll miss you because your absence exposes their own emptiness. Breadcrumbing works because it keeps someone emotionally tethered while requiring little effort. But when the tether breaks, they are left grasping at air. They crave the stability, the energy, and the presence they once ignored. And here's the ironic part. The more they realize they lost, the less likely they are to earn your attention back. By the time they feel the depth of what they threw away, you've already grown beyond needing their approval. They'll try to resurface with nostalgic messages, small gestures, or attempts at explanation, but those moments will feel hollow to you. You've learned that love and respect cannot be begged for. They must be freely given. You no longer fill spaces that were never yours to occupy. And that detachment transforms you from someone they could control into someone untouchable. They will observe from the sidelines, realizing too late that the presence they dismissed carried the weight of someone who knew their worth. Ultimately, the lesson is not about making them regret it. It's about embracing your liberation. They'll miss you when you're gone, but that miss is proof of your growth. It's evidence that your energy mattered, that your boundaries had power, and that your decision to step away was the ultimate act of self-respect. Walking away changes everything, not for them but for you. You step into a life that values your consistency, your heart, and your presence without compromise. And as they wrestle with the absence they created, you continue thriving, unapologetic, and fully aligned with the life and relationships you truly deserve.